Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019. The man who allegedly shot and killed Nipsey Hussle and wounded two others has been arrested. We'll have the details for you. Catherine Pugh, the mayor of Baltimore, steps aside amid a major scandal involving hundreds of thousands of dollars being paid to her for children's books bought by health insurance companies that she oversaw as a state legislator. We'll tell you exactly what is going on in Baltimore. Also, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. Y'all, she relies on a racist study to end rules to combat racial discrimination in school discipline. What in the hell do we have sitting in the Department of Education? We'll talk about it with Congresswoman Ida Bernice Johnson of Dallas. She joins us live. Republicans in Missouri, no shock, are trying to make it harder for citizens to mount ballot initiatives. Missouri Congressman Emanuel Cleaver is here live to talk about that and the Department of Homeland Security ending a program to monitor domestic terrorism, including white domestic terrorists. The second accuser of Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax tells her story to Gayle King. He also responds by saying he still wants a law enforcement investigation. There's racism nearly everywhere, including environmental racism. We'll talk with a man who spent 20 years at the EPA about toxic dumps, of course, where poor and black folks live and how they were put there on purpose. And wait until you hear this white retired Chicago cop say Laquan McDonald deserved not 16 bullets, but 18. Yep, no shock. Chicago voters go to the polls today to elect a new mayor. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling.
All right, here we go to my iPad. This is video of Los Angeles sheriff's officers taking Eric Holder into custody. He is the man identified as a suspect in the killing of rapper, entrepreneur, activist Nipsey Hussle. This video is from TMZ. Of course, they obtained this video. You could pull the audio up, Henry. There is audio. Okay, so very interesting in this audio here, folks. One woman could be heard. Why do they have so many cops taking this guy down? What did he do? They clearly were not aware at this. There was a, of course, citywide manhunt for Eric Holder. Of course, he shot and killed Nipsey Hussle on Sunday outside of his store on Crenshaw. Two other individuals were wounded. Now, again, there also was a woman involved who police say was Holder's getaway driver. She turned herself in today to Los Angeles police. LAPD Chief Michael Moore said that Holder and Hussle got into a verbal altercation on Sunday afternoon. Holder walked up on multiple occasions and engaged in conversations with the rapper. He came back armed with a handgun and opened fire. Chief Moore said investigators believe there was some personal matter between the two men. Now, also, last night, there was a vigil at Nipsey Hussle's clothing store, Marathon. It's the same shopping center where he began his rap career selling his CDs in the parking lot. The vigil was peaceful until what sounded like a gunshot was heard. Folks panicked, and a stampede ensued. A number of people were hurt. Turns out there were no shots fired, but there were several people who also were stabbed. They were treated at the scene as well. Los Angeles has been on high alert since Sunday afternoon when Hussle was gunned down. Folks are still reacting with tremendous pain, and as a result of that, there are about 4 stores or so that he owned in that particular area. He also, of course, was dating actress Lauren London, where both of them had children as well. And people still, again, are talking about him losing his life in this senseless violence, and how do we confront what's actually happening in black communities, personal disagreements ending in death. I want to bring in my panel right now to talk about this, because it's something that's quite important. Also, I'm going to show you Tamika Mallory and others. They are having a conference call tonight to allow folks to be able to share their thoughts and perspectives on this. Joining us is Malik Abdul, VP, Vice President, Black Conservative Federation, Dr. Niambi Carter, Howard University Department of Political Science, and Dr. Cleo Monago, Socio-Political Analyst and Activist. Cleo, I'll start with you. Look, you spent a considerable amount of time in Southern California working with law enforcement. And whenever these things happen, folks say, well, we should not jump to conclusions, but the reality is, here's another case, 33-year-old black man is dead because of a personal disagreement. How do we address what is clearly an evil, a virus that infects our community?
Well, one thing I think is important to articulate is that people, unfortunately, in society get murdered every day. People are implying that this is a particularly black phenomenon. No, it's not. People doing revenge killings happen in every community. And as a matter of fact, in this particular area, gang violence, as it's called, is pretty low. This is an anomaly, not a cliche in this particular area. So I think people should not re-stereotype. And also one of the concerns I heard about, I think it was on the Breakfast Club, is that a lot of people who are high profile are now saying they don't want to work in the community anymore because it's dangerous. I have to reiterate that this is an anomaly. A lot of people who are high profile even live in that community, and this incident is a rarity. It's an unfortunate rarity. And also Mr. What's his whole name? I'm gonna get it right here.
Nipsey Hussle.
Nipsey Hussle. He was a rarity as well in a good way. Unfortunately, he was murdered. I mean, he was a young man who was an entrepreneur. He was inspiring young people to be entrepreneurs. He built businesses. He bought up blocks. He was resisting gentrification in that area. So it was a very important role model. And the final comment I have is that one thing that's true, which I think is part of what you're referring to, Roland, is that in our community, we do have people who get envious of others. And there is a phenomena of people feeling irrelevant and feeling like they're insignificant, and when somebody becomes significant, they envy them. Sometimes they feel like black people don't deserve that because of internalized oppression. And I think the issue of internalized oppression among black people needs to be dealt with. I've been saying that forever. When we feel like because we're black, we're not deserving, and we destroy each other based on that perspective.
But Niambi, the reality is, whether we talk about this, whether we talk about other cities across this country, whether we talk about New Orleans, St. Louis, Chicago, Houston, Charlotte, you name it, we are dealing with the reality of what is happening with young black men. Henry, go to my iPad, please. I was traveling from Houston this morning, was up early, 4 a.m. T.I. was tweeting posting on Instagram a number of different things. This was one of the posts he made, self-hate enemy #1. He also posted this here. Black man, you were never meant to be a savage or a thug. That mentality was taught to you by white men who despise your masculinity. You are a god by nature. You are strong and moral by nature. You are kind, respectable, and merciful by nature. You are a product of peace and righteousness. Don't take on the identity of a beast to just deny your identity as a god. Your royalty is in righteousness. And he was crediting Nipsey Hussle on that. Yet this is, the reality is, it is a crisis when you have young black kids across this country. You go into elementary schools and middle schools and ask them how many of them have seen or had classmates who've lost their lives. It's not 1 or 2.
Right.
In many of these places, it's 5, it's 10, it's 20. And that is sad.
Absolutely. I mean, this one, I think, hurt particularly bad for all of the reasons that Cleo laid out. But I think it's also not having other mechanisms to diffuse conflict, right? If the only thing you know how to do is fight or kill or stab, that's what you're going to do. And I think we have not really done a good job of addressing the collective traumas of these communities, right? So people are traumatized. People are hurt. I mean, that's part of why people heard a noise and started running immediately, right, from this otherwise peaceful event, because people are hurt and afraid. And for all of the damage that Eric Holder is alleged to have done in the shooting, you know, we can't forget that he is also a product of a community that is traumatized and hurt, right? And so it's hurtful, and it's hard to see the humanity in others when they have taken such a bright light out of your community, out of your home, you know, out of your family. But we have to also remember that that same grace and mercy that we would have hoped he extended to Nipsey yesterday, that we extend to him and the larger community that's going to be reeling from this hurt for quite a long time.
Malik, a few minutes ago, Tamika Mallory, of course, the co-organizer of the Women's March, sent me this graphic here. Henry, pull it up, please. So much needs to be done. Let's talk about it. Call begins tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific sharp. Call-in details will be announced on social media at 9:50 p.m. Eastern. I'll be sharing that with you guys as well. Stay tuned. Hashtag This Is the Hard Work. And it's all about, in many ways, this is similar to what we did after the night George Zimmerman was found not guilty. We had about 800 folks who were on a call. Folks just wanted some place to just vent and share. Next night, we had more than 2,000 folks who were on a call. And Tamika called me yesterday about doing this because there are a number of young people who are in pain, who had great respect for Nipsey Hussle, and who want to be able to sort of just express their outrage and also have a place to begin a healing process. And a number of people, I've had conversations with folks, representatives of Master P, Snoop, and others who have talked about, again, dealing with this reality of violence. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, this is one of those instances that it hurts. We have a guy, you know, who did seem to be doing a lot in his own community. But to your point, you know, this is something that is all around the country. Unfortunately, in D.C., just the other day, it was, and I don't know if you guys actually heard about it, but there was a group of kids, and when I say kids, I mean I believe younger than 14. 3 of them robbed, and the 10-year-old who was part of that pulled a gun out on the young kid that he robbed. They stole his phone, and the young kid was able to identify him. You know, in a situation like that, I think it's a breakdown. You know, it's easy to say that, oh, well, you know, this is hip-hop. You know, a lot of people with this instance, they've tried to say, well, this is a hip-hop thing. It's not really a hip-hop thing. There's a culture that, in a sense, endorses this type of behavior. You know, we have kids like these kids. Somebody should have been there. So whoever gave the 10-year-old a gun. Who gives a 10-year-old a gun? A gun. And that 10-year-old saw that. That was an example somewhere in his community. He saw that, and he patterned himself after that example. And it's up to people. It's up to people like me. It's up to people like all of us to really step in. You know, don't just live out in the suburbs. You know, come into my community. Come into the community and volunteer. You know, mentor these kids. They need these type of role models. I'm someone who grew up, as they say, in the projects, and growing up, I never saw a guy in a tie. I never saw a man going to work in a tie.
Cleo, last point, I want to go to you. When I was in Chicago, several black psychologists talked about the need for intensive conflict resolution, not just in the community centers, but also in elementary schools as well, because there are people who, frankly, I mean, and again, based upon what we know in this case, disagreement between the two, guy feels disrespected, goes to his car, gets a gun, shoots 3 people. And we have to, and we have young men, young African-American men who instantly lash out and will commit a violent act. We had a fight in middle school, just the last week, a 5th grader was killed in a fight because of disagreement, conflict resolution, confronting the reality of PTSD, the trauma, mental illness that has to be dealt with in our schools.
One thing that concerns me, Roland, is that you mentioned that right after the Zimmerman incident that there were these calls and people needed to vent. What I think needs to occur is that people need to, as I've said before on this show, give their children a critical analysis of the society so they can recognize these messages that imply that they have low value. Because part of the reason why people act out on each other, I'm talking about black men specifically right now, is because they see each other as having no value. And you have shows, I know some of these people are associates, but you have shows like Power and these other shows which imply that to be cool is to sell drugs, and there's no such thing on the television, which a lot of people watch, as a show that humanizes and dimensionalizes black people in the context of black life and culture. So part of what people are acting out is, another thing people are acting out is the impact of computer games that are violent. You can watch a computer game and blow somebody's brains clean off, and it's very graphic, and then you go have lunch. So my point is that all of this trauma and murder and mayhem and a lack of attention to black men who are under a lot of stress and trauma in this country because of incarceration, because of the lack of positive affirmation. I mean, one thing I said the other night at a meeting that really offended some people was, it's important to have black girl magic, but if there's no equivalent black male magic, it implies irrelevance again. Black male irrelevance. We have to bring more balance in terms of who we affirm in our community.
I want to bring in Congresswoman Idris Johnson. You're the ranking member on the Subcommittee on Research and Science Education, emphasizes STEM education, so you're dealing with education. And so how do we, and again, so folks at home, when you hear ranking member, that means she's the chair. That's what it means. And so how should Congress deal with, again, the trauma that kids are facing? And so beyond this, when you think about the 3 students in Parkland committed suicide, you look at the father, of course, Sandy Hook. But when you look at the level of violence, poverty that exists in various communities, kids today are dealing with a level of trauma that was not there 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Well, I think you're right, because our environments have changed tremendously. So much more stimuli. A number of committees are dealing with various aspects of this particular problem. I just left a meeting on poverty. That has a lot of influence on what happens to young people, what role models are available, what parents are even available if they're out trying to work in a single-parent home. Mental health care has been lacking in this country and has been much needed. We passed legislation last term that we worked on several years, got a part of it passed, and we have more to go, which we hope to add to. It is, we're in a difficult environment in every environment. We're in a difficult environment legislatively in the Congress. We have very divided constituents. We have very divided representatives of those constituents. Every nick and cranny of this country has a representative there, and so you got all these mixed attitudes. It takes too long to address many of the problems. All of the problems on the table. We are talking about education. This particular administration has brought in a cabinet that we are trying our best to understand. One of the ones we cannot understand, the rationale for her being there, is the Secretary of Education. Just today, she mentioned something about how inept black kids are. They're more evil, they deserve more punishment, and that sort of thing.
And in fact, she got chastised by that by Congresswoman Catherine Clark of Massachusetts. A play that will come out to get your comment.
Are you saying here, when you quote this research, that the problem really is that black children are just more of a discipline problem? Because that's the research you've quoted in your report.
Well, Congresswoman, I've said it before and I'll say it again. No student, no child should be treated or disciplined differently based on their skin color, their race,
and I think
or their national origin.
Your report agrees with that. They just say that by the very basis of being a black child, you are more likely to be a discipline problem. That's what the study says that you quoted in your report and said, that's why we now think they may not be motivated by race. Black children are just plain old more disruptive in the classroom. How did you come to that conclusion?
Children should never, ever be discriminated against.
Well, I hope you take those words to heart and repeal your citing of this research.
And of course, they want to repeal the Obama-era rules that deal with discipline. But that also goes into Look, I was at my high school, Jack Hayes High School, yesterday in Houston, and this goes right into what teachers are dealing with. When you're dealing with young folks, especially young men who first of all, the hell they got to get through just to get to school,
Right.
and then you have districts automatically suspending them, saying, oh, acting out in classrooms and if you talk to teachers, you talk to others, they're talking about literally what they have to endure. And folks are saying, well, why can't they just sit out and learn? But other teachers say, yeah, but you have to take into account, again, what they're dealing with just to even get to school on that day.
You're very right. And what we're finding in our study on poverty is that you have fewer role models for young people.
Mm-hmm.
You have fewer mixed communities. Educational levels now are separating, professions are separating, and so children don't see a lot of role models that are in these particular situations to aspire to be like. And so there are a number of programs where we're trying to do that. But when you mix how much the problem really is and how much the funds have been cut for every single program that is designed to help to move young people and their families upward, it makes it very difficult for local communities to deal with it. We're looking at a situation now where the middle class is dwindling. Even though we've had huge tax breaks for the rich, and they are more rich than ever before, it didn't move a number of these young people up the scale at all. And it's not just minority kids, but they really have a larger percentage because it's harder because of racial prejudices for them to make it out of some of these neighborhoods and these environments.
Roland?
Well, real quick, final comment.
I think I may have a different perspective from you when it comes to the perspective that this trauma is new.
No. I don't believe the trauma is new. What I'm saying is the trauma is different. Look, when I think about me going through elementary school, going through middle school, going to high school, when I reflect back, and literally when I was walking the hallways of my high school, I was thinking about when I was sitting in the classroom, how many students died. And I can recall a couple of students who died in a car crash. I can recall a couple of others who may have died some other way. That's 4 over a period of 8-9 years. The 6 years I spent in Chicago, I remember one time we did a story, and literally there were kids who were not even in middle school who had already experienced the deaths of a dozen classmates. And so what I'm saying is that's what's different. The frequency of young folks dying as a result of violence, that's what I think is different today than it was when I was in elementary school, middle school.
Could I point to something else that's different also?
Congresswoman, then Cleo, go ahead.
When I was growing up in our one block, we had a college president, we had a cement mixer, we had a trash collector, we had a teacher, more than one teacher, we had beauticians, and we had a dentist. How much of that do you see in one block now?
Right, and that was because, first of all, with segregation,
right,
no matter how much money you had, you had to live right next to each other. But the reality is,
but the
now,
role models were there.
Right, but now, if you have a certain level of resources, you're able to move, and so you have compact areas of poverty. Cleo.
Well, Nipsey was a role model.
Yes, he was.
Nipsey was a undeniable and very visible role model. And I think there's a lot of black communities. I'm from Compton, South Central Los Angeles, the same area. There are role models right there. But when you're so traumatized that you can't see straight, you don't recognize role models because you're dealing with interpersonal disorientation. One thing that I think is true, which is why I had my comment to you, Roland, is that, and you kind of made your point, and Chicago is a special case. Chicago, to this day and for a while, has been particularly violent in terms of its history.
I mean, to Chicago, I can go to New Orleans. When I went down with Mitch Landrieu, he kept a binder, and then it became 4 binders, and then 5 binders. And what he would do is, it was the murder scenes of young black men who were killed, and he asked the families to give him photos of them in their ordinary life, and he said how it was growing and growing. So it can, again, I could talk about Houston, I could talk about Charlotte, Philadelphia, and so I'm just saying that that our kids today are seeing a level of gun violence and death at such early ages than what was the case when I was in high school.
I'll make my point quickly, because it's going to take me all day if I keep having.
Make it quick.
We're dealing with the festering of neglected trauma. Trauma that was already there in these communities, that was never properly engaged, particularly among black males who have been trained to act like a man and put on a man performance, what I call man drag.
Or also be hard, which is why
Same thing.
When you go to these schools and you got young men who take a photo and not smiling, and I always say we're not taking jail photos because they literally have been told you hard. Yep. You are hard.
Right, but the other part of that narrative is that you have to act hard so people won't see the fact that you're in pain.
Got it.
You have to perform like you're a man so you won't be seen as you crying because you can't afford as a black man in a society that already devalues you to come off weak. Right. When we try to counter these phenomena, we have to understand what people are going through. Venting is important, but we need to do a methodological discussion and implementation on how to reverse the symptomology, because it can be reversed. I've seen it reversed in my own work, that black men can go from being reactionary and upset to getting the proper tools to learn how to manage their righteous rage, because the rage is righteous in terms of it having a real justifiable context of where it comes from, but we don't address it.
Well, again, I think the Congresswoman, I do believe that dealing with the realities of trauma in schools is critically important, and then there has to be more resource officers and not just after shooting like at Parkland, because all of a sudden when that happens, all of a sudden they flood the zone as opposed to what happens every single day. Final comment from you, and then we move on to our next story.
Well, we are in the midst of trying to figure out a lot of things, and they've been compounded by the particular administration where we are. I don't think there's a major city in this country that's not dealing with, not just with African American kids, but immigrant kids and kids who have been here all the time.
Got it.
We have a lot more diversity, a lot less attention to that diversity, and it's, we're at a beginning, and we've got to do something about it. I think all of us realize that there are certain programs that have been effective, but we've got to do more than that. We've got to address mental health in this country.
Got it. All right, Congresswoman Johnson, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks, let's talk about what's happening in Baltimore, where Baltimore Mayor Catherine Pugh is in some serious trouble. She is citing health reasons, saying she faces pneumonia. But while that's the case, she faces a criminal investigation into hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales of her children's book series, Healthy Holly, to the University of Maryland Medical System and the healthcare company Kaiser Permanente. The Baltimore Sun newspaper broke the story of $500,000 in book sales in no-bid contracts to the University of Maryland Medical System over a 5-year period while Pugh was on the board of directors. This also was taking place when she was in the state legislature. She has since resigned from the board. Yesterday, the Baltimore Sun reported that Kaiser Permanente had paid Pugh more than $100,000 to purchase books from 2015 to 2018. Now, Pugh controls a city agency that awarded Kaiser a $48 million contract with the city. After that was revealed, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan asked for a criminal investigation into the book deals. The Baltimore Sun reported today that Pugh pocketed another $90,000 in book sales through a charity to others with city contracts. At first, Pugh defended the purchases, but now says the sales to the University of Maryland Medical System were a mistake, and she returned the $100,000. Now, the other issue is that when they began the investigation, in several of these places, they could not find any copies of the books at all. Pugh is going to be temporarily replaced by Bernard C. Jack Young, who is the current city council president. He has already said he is not going to run for the mayoral seat in 2020. But it certainly is a significant problem in Baltimore for the mayor. I've talked to folks there. She is having some serious health issues as a result of having pneumonia. But certainly this investigation does not make it any easier, and so we'll be following this story to see what happens next. All right, folks, going to go to a break. We'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Hey fam, go check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. All right, folks, big day in Chicago where one black female mayor apparently on her way out. First of all, there's going to be a black female mayor for the first time in history in Chicago. Of course, Harold Washington was first elected in 1983. Eugene Sawyer became the mayor after his death. But we now going to have today, as folks to go to the polls, they'll be closing fairly soon. Lori Lightfoot, former federal prosecutor, as well as she'll be facing Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. They're the two finalists. They emerge from a huge group of candidates in the general election. Preckwinkle, she is called the more establishment candidate. Lightfoot is much more of the insurgent. Preckwinkle has the support of the public employees unions who have spent millions of dollars boosting her campaign with boots on the ground. Now, Lightfoot is a successful corporate lawyer who worked in the administration of current Mayor Rahm Emanuel. She's a strong critic of the Chicago Police Department, and both present themselves as progressives. We'll have the results tomorrow, as one of them, again, will become the first black female mayor of the city of Chicago. Now, also, it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens in that city when you think about leadership style, because with Emanuel and before that Daley, in Chicago, the mayor controlled nearly every public dollar in the city. The mayor controlled the city budget, the mayor controlled the housing budget, the school budget, and the transportation budget. Let's see if they change the rules when somebody black becomes mayor. All right, folks, we're one of our partners. You have plenty of pictures in your home, but you've never seen anything like this before. Introducing Easy Tiles, the world's first photo tiles made of sleek and ultra lightweight glass. Easy Tiles makes it super simple. You use their exclusive app for iPhone and Android to upload as many photos as you like. Then they print them on tempered glass. Your order arrives on your doorstep in just a few days. And that's when the real fun begins, because with Easy Tiles, you transform your living space with a gallery wall that will amaze each and every guest. Easy Tiles are even simple to hang, no hammer and no nails. Cleo could even do this. And because they're mounted on small risers, they appear to float on your wall. Folks, they're easy to order, easy to hang, and guaranteed for life. Now, you can save 30% on any size order, plus get free shipping on orders of 4 or more. Just download the free Easy Tiles app at easytiles.com and turn your best memories into beautiful glass wall art. Plus, save big now with this special offer. That's easytiles.com, easytiles.com. All right, folks. Malik is really going to be excited right now. We keep telling you about how Republicans want to screw as many Americans out of their right to vote as possible, using every type of means at their disposal. In Wisconsin and North Carolina, Republicans dominate the legislature there. They pass all kinds of laws to not only hamstring incoming Democratic governors, but to also, again, put on onerous voter restrictions. In Utah, voters voted to expand Medicaid, and the state legislature said, y'all know what the hell y'all doing. We're going to overrule you. In Florida, voters overwhelmingly passed an amendment to the state constitution to allow the formerly incarcerated to vote. Now the Republicans in the legislature, they want to try to keep them from voting by saying you must pay all of your fines. In Michigan, the voters there actually passed a bill to redraw congressional lines. Republicans there said, we know how to do it better, and they're fighting that initiative. Now let's get to Missouri. Last year, folks in that state voted overwhelmingly for ballot measures legalizing medical marijuana and hiking the minimum wage and revamping how districts are drawn, all over the objections of Republicans in the legislature. The state's chief elections officer, Republican Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, believes the entire process has simply gotten out of hand. As he put it, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. So he and Malik's buddies in the legislature want to limit ballot initiatives in Missouri, the show me state. Joining us now is Congressman Emanuel Cleaver of Kansas City, also former mayor of that city. Congressman, this is Why are they afraid of the people? If the people want to pass a ballot measure, and last I checked, I thought Republicans loved ballot measures when it was affirmative action in California and in Michigan and other states led by Ward Connolly. Now they're saying, y'all don't know what y'all doing.
Well, I think this flipped over in the two terms of President Obama. Many of the legislatures around the country, state legislatures, flipped over, and we woke up when we had Hillary Clinton on the ballot to find out that just right after that election, right after that, we found out that all these legislatures.
2010, 16 yes. Flip. Republicans had 31 governor's mansions.
And that's when they began to exert themselves. And I think it started with this Alex, where all of these companies give money.
Yep.
And folk come together and they plan a strategy for state or nationwide moves by the political party called Republicans. And so what they've done in Missouri, we passed minimum wage, and they don't want to pay. It was $15 is what we passed, and they come back to try to remove not only that, but the whole process of citizen initiatives. You know, and they're making it infinitely more difficult to do that. They're trying to drown democracy. They're trying to reduce democracy, all under the name of democracy. And it's happening everywhere. I think we have about 33 states where legislatures have introduced measures that would in some way dampen the petition initiatives initiated by the people. And, you know, now there is an antidote, and it is for us to do what the people in California did. When they began to pass their initiatives, they made it a requirement that in order for the legislature to overturn it, they had to have a supermajority of the California General Assembly. And in other places, they're saying that the voters have to approve any legislative attempt to overturn the people. But unfortunately, in Missouri, we didn't have anything in place. So we're going to become victims, and it's going to happen over and over again until we take back some of these legislative seats.
Malik, why are y'all scared of the people? Why are y'all scared of the people voting on ballot initiatives in red states?
Well, I don't know that people are afraid of that.
Okay, Malik, would you like for me to repeat?
I don't know.
Would you like for me to repeat, in Utah, a red state where the voters voted overwhelmingly for Medicaid expansion, the Republicans said, oh, y'all don't know what y'all doing, so we're going to ignore you. Let's talk about what happened in, I think it was North Dakota? No, it was in Montana.
North Dakota.
Where the voters passed a rigorous ethics law. Republicans said, you know what? We're just going to ignore what in the hell y'all had to do. Same thing. Michigan is actually a pretty red state once you get outside of the large cities. And they said, oh, y'all had this ballot initiative to create a commission to draw districts. We really don't care what y'all think. And then, of course, in Florida, Amendment 4. They want to change that. Those are all red states.
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with necessarily being afraid. As I said before, I think this is something that is purely political.
Right. Politically afraid.
But I've mentioned that this has happened in D.C. as well, where the city council overturned.
You mean being afraid?
Well, you can say that.
Well, hell, first of all, D.C. not even a state. But that statehood, that's a whole other issue.
But this studio is in D.C., so we can't discount D.C.
No, I'm not discounting D.C.
Well, I'm just saying, so you can't just say.
But what I'm trying to understand, okay,
it happened here in D.C. My point is
okay, that's like yes, 1 out of 12.
Well, if
but go ahead.
Hard enough, I'm sure we could find something else.
No, actually, you can't find that hard.
But what I will say is that yes, this is politically motivated, as well as the politically motivated effort that's out there now to ban the Electoral College. You know, this is something. Hold on.
First of all, we got very close to actually changing the Electoral College. It fell very short.
Yeah, the Democrats have now.
Now, hold up. Now, first of all,
because that's politically.
Hold up.
Right?
First of all, there's nothing that says you cannot change the United States Constitution, Congressman. And then you give a very perplexed look as Malik was talking.
That's not politically
and I understand.
But
go
that's
ahead.
Not politically motivated. What they're talking about, the presidential.
But okay. See, hold up. Congressman, before you speak, Malik, if Congress chooses to change to ban the Electoral College, that is an amendment, which then
that's not politically motivated,
which then has to go to the states and then the states have to vote, Niambi, by what's the number? Two-thirds of the states must ratify the amendment, which is not easy to do. That is different than Republicans saying we don't want ballot initiatives by the people. Congressman, go ahead.
Well, look, I'm getting a headache because I don't understand when you say it's a political move. Look, the word is discriminatory or exclusionary instead of political. They're trying to keep a certain portion of the population out of the ballot box. They don't want them in there voting, and they've gone to great lengths all over this country trying to keep people from, whether it's voter ID, whatever it is. Let's stop them from voting. And if this is a true democracy, I mean, we just had an initiative overturned which would allow people to register on election day, same day. I mean, what they stopped, and they're stopping in some places souls to the polls, because too many black people were voting after church services. So I don't understand that.
Niambi, please, go ahead.
But I think a lot of what Congressman Cleaver and others are talking about is how much of our government runs by just, this is pro forma, right? This is just what we do by custom. None of this has to stay this way. So because there were not extra protections placed on the legislature for the people of Missouri to protect their direct ballot initiatives, now you can have the legislature saying, let's revise these processes. Let's make people pay.
And let's be clear that until you had the 1965 Voting Rights Act, you did not have black folks in huge numbers voting. So frankly, for a majority, more than a majority of the country, of this country, black folks could not able to exercise their power. And Republicans actually right now are pissed off that you have black folks and Latinos and other folks who are exercising their power and are using the ballot initiative. And for all of these years, Republicans and conservatives use the ballot initiative in order to change all sorts of things across the country. And now that progressives have woken up and went, damn, we could use the same thing y'all did. Now they want to change the rules to keep the voters, the public, the very people who pay their salaries, to keep them from participating in the process.
And I think direct ballot initiatives are one of those things that Republicans love for a very long time.
Oh, a long time.
A really long time. And like you said,
long time.
People not thinking about this as a mechanism to get more of what you want. And now that we've moved, especially for black communities and others, from the federal government to the states and local governments for these kinds of changes, now you have renewed interest in pulling
Cleo,
back.
why they are afraid of ballot initiatives? Because if you put medical marijuana on the ballot, it's going to drive out young voters and progressives. And so what Republicans don't want is ballot initiatives that's going to drive up turnout. That's what they're doing. Cleo, then the congressman.
Well, Malik seemed to be apprehensive to the term scared and fearful, even though I think it's an appropriate term. But in your part of the world, isn't Wesley Bell there, and he's the new prosecuting attorney?
He's in St. Louis, County.
St. Louis. Well, he has fulfilled the fears of white supremacists. He got his position, and he got rid of all the white supremacists who let Darren Wilson off. That's the kind of stuff they're afraid of. That's why I brought it up, because he was their worst nightmare, and he actually executed what I think a lot of them fear. He got rid of the white regime, the racist regime that was destroying black folks and allowing their cops to kill black people. And as soon as he got in the position, he got rid of them, and he used his power.
Congressman.
And I think that's what they're afraid of.
Right, they're afraid of turnout.
And they're afraid of this. 1.4 million former felons in Florida can now vote. This is what they're afraid of. If you can answer this question, it solves everything. Why would someone want to stop souls to the polls? Yes, sir. If you can answer that, I think it works everything out.
Well, it's
That's what I thought.
Well, I mean, it's not. I mean, you're saying that's what you thought. I don't know if you've watched the show before, but I've actually been very outspoken as far as any voter suppression efforts, disagreeing with it. So I don't know what it is.
Sorry,
that
But he felt like you had an answer.
But I'm saying,
But there is an answer.
Exactly.
There is an answer.
The assumption is because you're on the inside of these nuts.
I'm not on the inside of any nuts anymore than you're inside of any nuts with Democrats.
Let me be less offensive and say because you're in the Republican Party.
Yes.
Okay, I know I took that back. I apologize for saying it out loud. But the point I'm trying to make is that because you're inside of the Republican Party, the assumption that you're the Republicanologist here, and that you can break down why these people be tripping.
Well, you've never got the answer to that question. A number of times that I've been on the show, we've never come to a conclusion other than the fact that this is something that Republicans shouldn't be doing.
Man, we know why they're doing it, though.
But my point is when I was talking about this effort to ban the Electoral College, that is politically motivated, and that's also something I don't agree.
And also, as Roland said, white folks are fearful of losing power.
Well, I don't think
as their numbers shrink and everybody else grows.
I don't know.
They don't want to be voted out of existence.
I don't think that the people who are pushing this ban the Electoral College I don't think that they're white or they're trying to do white supremacy or whatever it is.
Hold on, please. No. Actually, getting rid of the Electoral College is confronting white supremacy.
Well, no, how is that, Roland? Because
Malik, because the Electoral College was actually a slavery compromise. That was all. The Electoral College is built on white supremacy.
Well, how is it that, so it's the same Electoral College that elected Barack Obama and the popular vote as well. The idea, this is all coming.
Hold up. One black man out of 45.
But every.
No. First of all, black folks are not sitting here sweating that because Obama also won the popular vote.
Yeah, he did.
The reality is, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. The reality is, no. Let me correct you. Let me correct you.
Because of Hillary Clinton.
No, the discussion also took place prior to 2016, in 2000, when Al Gore won the popular vote, and then but the Supreme Court decided for George W. Bush. The reality is we've had in America 3 different times where this has happened, and we saw exactly what happened. In each case, you had this split. The bottom line is this here. Now you have people who are saying, wait a minute, why do we have an archaic system of using the Electoral College? Why can't it be popular vote? That's not a Democrat or Republican thing. Yeah. That's a people thing.
No, I think it's totally political.
And let me say it again. Political. The Electoral College was a slavery compromise. Built on the back of white supremacy. Niambi, you are a political science professor at Howard University.
Yes. Well, so it can be a both-and proposition. It can be politically motivated and problematic at the same time. And I think when you hear about the way the framers talked about the Electoral College, it was for illiberal means, right? That we don't trust the American public to make a decision, and it overrepresents certain states. Right?
And it was because rich white landowners did not want the people voting and determining leadership. They wanted to maintain who was in power. That was a slavery compromise. I got to ask the Congressman this before he goes. Daily Beast is reporting that the Department of Homeland Security is disbanding a group of analysts who focus on domestic terrorism, of course, also white domestic terrorists. Now, of course, you also sit on a committee that deals with this. Just got to get your thoughts on this. I mean, you have all these cases. We have seen a tremendous spike since Trump got elected of white domestic terrorists. Case after case, more white domestic terrorists have been killing Americans than Muslims have been killing America. But the Trump administration is like, we can get rid of this.
Well, what it is just like the Trump administration will not allow the CDC to report on gun violence or study gun violence. The same thing is here. They don't want the federal government involved in pointing fingers at the white supremacy groups that are increasing. And that's not coming from me. It's not coming from the CBC. It's coming from third parties who are out keeping up with this every day. And every social scientist in the nation is talking about the surge in white supremacy groups. Not just in the United States. It has now spread all into Europe. It's exploding. And I think it's one of the most dangerous things going on. And we're going to have this. We just had the secretary in front of our committee, chaired by Benny Thompson, who takes no prisoners. I think she's going to come back. She's going to have to explain this, as Ben Carson has to explain why he's dismantling some of the agencies that study fair housing.
All right, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, I was glad to have you here.
Good to be with you.
Good Alpha Man, I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. All right, folks. Today on the CBS Morning Show, Gayle King had an interview for the second day with an accuser of Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. This time, Meredith Watson, who says that Justin Fairfax raped her when they were students at Duke University. Here is a part of that interview.
I was not worried at all. I completely trusted him. We were hanging out, and everything was normal. And at one point, he left the room, and when he came back in the room, he sort of stood blocking the door. It was sort of imposing the way he walked in the room, and he shut the door, and it was sort of like simultaneous. I heard the door click and the light went off.
Click like locking the door.
Mm-hmm.
And you think what?
Oh no, what's about to happen?
Mm-hmm. You became concerned?
Mm-hmm. He did things that you shouldn't do to someone without their permission. And I tried several times to get up and leave, and was pushed back down.
And what happened?
He forcibly sexually assaulted and raped me. I was not on the bed initially. There was a couch, and he pulled me over, and I tried several times to get up and was pushed back down, held down.
And you made it clear, this is not what I want.
It was very clear.
Because you know he is saying this night was consensual.
If you have to hold someone down, it's not consensual.
All right, folks, Justin Fairfax said that it was consensual. In a statement, he said that he had passed 2 polygraph tests that confirmed his version of the events. In addition to that, he also said this, quote, Henry, go to my iPad. My accusers have not filed criminal charges, and they have not sued me. Instead, we see escalating media appearances and stated desire for a political process that is unprecedented in Virginia and could not be designed to get at the truth. Such a process would instead be a media circus used for partisan and political purposes. He said, I have also called for a fair, full, and impartial investigation of the allegations and my denials. I am completely confident that such an investigation would exonerate me and clear my good name, which I have spent a lifetime building. Quickly, I want to go to my panel here, Niamh. I want to start with you first. Vanessa Tyson spoke yesterday, and she was asked by Gayle King, why won't you file a complaint in Boston? She said, well, as a political scientist, politicians, they're able to get away from things and keep them hidden with an investigation. But she says she'll testify at an impeachment hearing. Same thing here with Meredith Watson. Statute of limitations hasn't run out in North Carolina. She's saying, I want an impeachment hearing, but they won't file a criminal complaint. So I'm still sort of stuck on, if I want justice, why ignore the legal process, which has subpoena power? Virginia does not have any jurisdiction to compel somebody in North Carolina or Boston to testify who might have been there.
Well, I mean, I can't speak to what either Meredith Watson or Dr. Tyson feel internally and why they're making whatever choices they're making for them. But let's be clear, I think part of the investigatory process, at least from my understanding of what Dr. Tyson was saying, that if this is handled by the Suffolk County DA, I mean, and they investigate, and at this point, we are now multiple years past this event, 15 years past this event, and it ends up in a he said, she said, well, that still remains private. And I think the public hearing at least gives full voice to both accusers and Justin Fairfax, Governor Fairfax. So I think that was the concern.
But if there's an impeachment hearing, it's still going to be he said, she said.
Right, but I think the public gets to hear what everyone has to say. I mean, I don't know, right? This is my best guess of why one would forgo one process and attempt another process.
The issue for me, Cleo, again, is the Suffolk County DA, who's a black woman, has said, if Dr. Tyson files a complaint, I will immediately investigate. Her lawyer said in February they were going to meet with the Suffolk County DA. To this date, they have not. Meredith Watson could file a legal complaint with the DA there in North Carolina. They have not. And so if you want to say what's partisan, it's an impeachment hearing. versus a legal investigation that has real subpoena power, that has that could literally call people who were there in both places, call them, interview them, bring them before a grand jury. The Virginia legislature can't do any of that. Go ahead.
First of all, borrowing from what you said or being inspired by it, what people see on TV is edited. What they see on TV is not in real time, and it's what wasn't left on the floor. As someone who's been on television before and didn't recognize myself once I got to television, you cannot use TV as a form in order to inform the public. So I think that's important for people to understand that. Secondly, it's heart-wrenching, of course, when I see a woman or people who are disproportionately and statistically more abused sexually than other groups, women. My heart goes out and I get very concerned. But I'm with Roland on this in terms of this is not making any sense, because if they went into an impeachment hearing, as he just mentioned, they'd have to go into detail in that context as well. So it doesn't make any sense that they won't legalize this and put it in the context of law so people can find out what's going on.
And in fact, the only thing, so let's say there's an impeachment hearing. Let's say they go through, let's say he gets impeached, loses his job. That's it. If that was one of my sisters, I want his ass in jail.
But assuming he's going to jail, because say he gets found not guilty, that's not an exoneration.
Oh, right. But at least for me,
there might be a consequence in losing the job. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
Right. That's a real immediate consequence, as opposed to going through this other channel, which might be more private. Right. I get what you're saying about.
So really, what you're saying is their strategy is actually, we want to fight this in a court of public opinion.
That's right.
As opposed
I don't
to
know their strategy.
Well, no.
What
I'm saying is, here's what it seems to me.
Doing.
What it seems to me is they want to fight it, Malik, in the court of public opinion and not the legal arena. When the statute of limitations hasn't run out. Typically, when the statute runs out, you fight it in the civil court or public opinion. I just think it's interesting they don't want to get the DAs involved. I don't understand that. Malik, go ahead.
I don't think it's that interesting. My comments here are the same as what I made about Christine Blasey Ford or any victim. They deserve to be heard. Whether or not they should be believed is a different story, because that's something that has to be proven. But what concerns me and what we're talking about in the Fairfax's accusers is that the tone of the discussion is very different than what it was with Christine Blasey Ford, because the Montgomery County Police actually said, they announced that if she filed charges against him in Montgomery County, that they would, pursue that. She didn't do it. What did she ask to do? She first sent a letter to her congressman, then went to the senator.
Got it. First of all,
but I'm saying,
hold on. But let's stay on this. But let's also remember, a lieutenant governor in Virginia and a Supreme Court nominee there for life. I get it.
We're talking about victims and things like that.
Okay, I got it.
That's different at all. But the questions that are being asked of these, I would say, black women, aren't the questions that were asked of Christine Blasey Ford. I don't know if Maxine Waters is going to go and give a letter of we thinking about you to any of Fairfax's accusers like she did Christine Blasey Ford.
That has nothing to do with this case here.
But the reality is that she chose to do. As you know, we're talking about doing something publicly. That's exactly what they're doing here.
No,
but the questions weren't asked about her.
But can you stay on this story?
But we can't.
I mean, can you stay on this story?
But what we're doing?
No, we're discussing this story.
Sure.
We're not discussing Kavanaugh and Blasey Ford.
But you've just created another standard.
No, actually, I didn't.
No.
First of all, don't use we, okay? Take that bullshit to mainstream media. That was not the conversation we had on this show, okay? And this whole issue.
Well, the conversation that we had on this show is that Kavanaugh was guilty.
No.
Said that she was guilty.
That's what some guests said, that he was guilty. I didn't render a decision as to whether or not he was guilty or not. I still don't think his trifling ass should have been on the Supreme Court because, first of all, they screwed Obama and Merrick Garland with the Gorsuch deceit. That's another conversation. Go with your final comment before I go to a break.
So I think there's a way in which we are sort of fetishizing this legal process as a way of vindicating either Justin Fairfax or the victims. And I think this is a really hard case because everybody feels some skin in the game on both sides.
No,
right?
but it still is he said, she said.
It is still he said,
you
she
have
said.
other,
I think there's a way in which this conversation about black women, in particular black women's abuse, it is particularly if the allegation is against a black man, becomes a conversation where black women should, I don't know, not say anything because black men might be hurt. And that's what it sounds like, though.
No, my position on this is very clear. Again, if that was my sister, if that was my aunt, if that was my niece, and that was my cousin, I'm not waiting, because first remember, here's also the difference. They have to wait for the legislature to decide on their own.
For sure.
We're going to have an impeachment hearing. One Republican came out and said we're going to have it, then he pulled it back.
Yeah. For sure.
There's nothing that indicates they're actually going to move forward. But if I file a legal complaint, boom, investigation starts. And what I'm saying is, what I don't understand is why you can't do both. I'm trying to understand why they refuse to file a legal complaint. It's very simple. You can file a legal complaint and still say, I'll testify in an impeachment hearing. I just find it.
They still file the complaint, though. They haven't refused. They just haven't done it yet.
Okay, but if you say publicly in February we're going to meet with the Suffolk County DA, and we're in April, and there's been no meeting, and then
they still have time.
They still have time, but I'm just saying.
It's unfair to assume there's some kind of bias regarding one or the other. It's because we believe that they should go to the law and have an investigation. I don't have no bias against the women or the man in this instance. I want there to be some kind of balance phenomena or interface that occurs where we can find out what's really going on in public. The public sphere is not the right place.
But here's the hold on, stop. We ain't talking about Kavanaugh.
We have to talk.
No, we don't have to talk about Kavanaugh. We are talking about Fairfax, Tyson, and Watson. No, it's not. We are right here.
It's not the same situation.
Because it's not. Because the story is Fairfax. The story is Fairfax, Watson, and Tyson. That's the story.
Who's doing the same thing that Christine Blasey Ford did?
Well, guess what?
And she was supported by everyone.
You can talk to, first of all, she was supported by everyone, but you can talk to yourself about Blasey Ford. I'm going to a break. Back on Roland Martin Unfiltered in a moment.
Only as we rise do we encounter opposition. Abolitionist and autobiographer Frederick Douglass.
All right, y'all, calling all HBCU alumni, students, and leaders. Enter the Ford Motor Company HBCU Mobility Challenge and win $25,000 for your school. Building on the long-term support of HBCUs, Ford is looking to improve mobility in HBCU communities through innovative solutions. The winning program will receive a grant of $25,000 to implement their proposal. Now, the deadline has been extended to April 15, 2019. Let me help y'all out, okay? I don't understand all you HBCU people, okay? A handful of universities have tried to get the 25 grand. Y'all, here's the website, fgb.life, to apply. It don't cost you no money to apply. You could get 25 grand for your HBCU. Go to the damn website. It's free money. Go to fgb.life for more info and to apply. You can get 25 grand for your HBCU. Go to the site before it goes further in our community. We thank you for being a part of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm just saying, okay? We talk about supporting HBCUs. They trying to give 25 grand. I'm just saying, y'all should apply. fgb.life. All right, y'all. Across the country, black and poor communities face dangerous levels of pollution, toxic air, and water. In Flint, the water crisis is only one example. An estimated 70% of the country's contaminated waste sites are located near low-income housing, and the EPA estimates that 1.5 million people of color live in areas vulnerable to contamination. We're talking about what needs to be done about environmental racism with Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the Environmental Protection Agency. First and foremost, we've seen this conversation around the Green New Deal, and Republicans want to act as if it's no big deal, that you know what, hey, I don't really see what the problem is, but this is a significant issue if you're poor because, trust me, in communities with credit score of 700 or above, you're not seeing environmental dumps.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, your zip code determines how long you will live, what types of diseases that you'll probably have to deal with. In our country, 200,000 people die each year prematurely from air pollution. We got 25 million folks who have asthma, 7 million kids, and disproportionate is African American and Latino children who are the ones who are losing their lives. The NAACP had a report that came out called Cold Blooded that shared that 68% of our folks live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant. And we know that that pollution that's impacting our communities is also that same pollution that is now warming up the planet and causing all these crazy things that are going on with climate change.
And again, when we're having this discussion about the Green New Deal, there's just sort of this slam your head into the sand and acting as if these things are not happening, as if climate change. Look, this stuff. Then you got Trump joking, hey, it's cold. Where's that climate change when we need it? I mean, you literally have a major piece in Antarctica that's about to split in half. You are seeing things in Antarctica and other places that we've never seen before because it's getting warmer.
Yeah, I mean, trillions of gallons of ice has melted, and that's changing the dynamic that's going on in our oceans. And we have some just incredible different dynamics that are going on with the floods that are happening. You know, before you used to see 50-year floods, 100-year floods. Now you're seeing 500-year floods. And what folks don't realize is that our communities of color, low-income communities, and indigenous populations who are being hit first and worse because of these types of things.
But how do we also get our folks to focus on this issue? Because, look, if you had to do a list of the top 5, top 10, environmental racism is not going to be on that list. And this impacts health. Yep. You could talk about police brutality, you could talk about education, you could talk about all those things, but what's in your air, what's in your water, frankly, can impact whether you can actually read or write. It impacts your learning, impacts your health, impacts your viability in terms of your length of life.
Yeah. I mean, you raise an interesting point. So, you know, folks were talking earlier about Nipsey and being shot. More folks are dying because of air pollution who are dying from gun violence. Gun violence is super important. We should be focused on it. More folks are dying every year from air pollution who are dying in the wars that are happening around our planet. So your question is, how do we get our folks more engaged in these issues? One, I would say that the environmental justice movement has been going on now for over 30 years. So there are all kinds of folks of color who are focusing on these issues. Now, we can have a conversation about the resources that need to go to those organizations to help them to better be able to spread the message in a way that resonates with their communities. When I was with the Hip Hop Caucus, one of the things that was important there was how we utilize culture to make sure that it was connecting with the impacts that are happening, but also the opportunities and how we change the dynamics that are happening inside of our communities. So we work with all kinds of artists and entertainers who are using their platforms to be able to share. So, you know, when we were both recently in LA at the Image Awards, Beyonce was there. So when the hurricanes came through Houston and Beyonce began to talk about the impacts that were happening inside of communities, folks began to get on their phones and check out the dynamics that were happening in that space. When you have folks like Antonique Smith, who took one of Marvin Gaye's songs before and remade it and began to share with people how prophetic he was, but also her own vision on these issues, it changes the game because our people see folks who look like them, who come from their communities, who they can connect with, and they begin to have a better understanding. You know, people talk about Flint, but we were talking about Baltimore a little while ago and Freddie Gray and him being impacted by lead. So when people begin to see themselves reflected in these conversations, when they see themselves reflected in the organizations who are working on these issues, that's how we begin to change this narrative. And I would just sort of touch on one of the things that you shared with us. There's recent polling now that shows that healthcare issues, yes, number one, but climate is also becoming one of those top issues that people are looking at. And I hope that people will understand that the drivers in climate change are coming from our most vulnerable communities. When you look at those fossil fuel facilities, they are located inside of our communities. When you look at the transportation routes that people have used over the years to separate our communities, to take wealth out of our communities and move it into others, the emissions that are happening in that space are the ones that are driving up climate change. When you look where the fossil fuel pipelines are, they're running through our communities. You can look just down the street in Buckingham County in Virginia, founded by freed slaves, and Governor Northam was not getting engaged in that process to actually stop this community from having a natural gas compressor. So when people see themselves and they see that people are pushing back, but people are also thinking critically about how to make change happen, I think that's when we start to win this dynamic.
Somebody who's watching for social media, they want to know, Where should they go to get more information? What groups could they join, could align with? Who would you recommend?
Oh, there's a ton of groups. I would say to Google the environmental justice organizations that are out there. Are a number of networks that are across the country. You have WEAC, you have UPROSE, who are both in New York. You have the folks in California with the California Environmental Justice Alliance who are out there. Or you can go to the Hip Hop Caucus, who's also doing work, or you can go to the National Wildlife Federation. There are a number of organizations that are now focused on these issues.
All right, Mustafa, we surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much. All right, folks, last story here. That is the, remember the video that we showed you out of Dallas, where the white supremacists viciously beat a black woman. Folks, y'all have the video. Go ahead and play it. This was captured here. At one point, he pulls his gun out on her. He was initially charged with misdemeanor, but because of the public outcry, folks demanded he get charged again, and so he did so. But it was interesting when he went to court. He shaved his face, looked totally different. Yes, Malik, yeah, he punched his sister and beat the hell out of her. Yet when he was released from jail, he went out of a side door because there was a group of brothers who were waiting on his ass outside. Good. And he did not want to have to face them after what he did to her. Now, here's what's also interesting in this case. Now, his name is Austin Sheffield. Okay, he now faces felony charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and unlawfully carrying a weapon. Now, though, Dallas police might charge her for felony criminal mischief because she broke his window after he beat the hell out of her. Hey, Dallas, I'm just letting y'all know, if y'all think y'all saw black folks at a previous protest, charge this sister. Charge her for criminal mischief for breaking a window and see who shows up at Dallas PD. It's a black chief there. I would advise y'all not to go down this path. Would not be wise. I want to thank our panel for a conversation today. Thank you so very much. Folks, don't forget you can support Roland Martin Unfiltered by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar you give goes to support this show, and we'll certainly keep on top of all the news of the day and bringing you the perspective that nobody else will. So again, RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, and you can, of course, contribute via Cash App, PayPal, or even Square. All right, folks, y'all have an absolutely great day. I got to go. Holla! Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.